Welcome back to Rock Guitar Confidential with Scott and Ryan. On today's episode, 80s metal stars. Where are they now? And what is the Garthpocalypse? Find out next.
All right, what time are we in?
Well, we're in 4/4 time.
Oh, okay. Is that tempo 120?
It's 147.
147. Wow, we're way faster than
27 faster.
That's crazy. So are we going to have a click on the entire time we're recording?
There we go.
So I was worried I was going to get out of time a little bit, so I'm glad it was there to keep me straight.
You know what? It's always important to be on time and in time.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you're a drummer, because that's the only thing that you really should be able to do if you're a
right.
drummer. Stay on time, man. Stay on time.
So you were saying Chuck Billy has a brand of tequila.
I don't know if it's some kind of alcohol brand. I always started doing it, but I mean, all those guys are starting to diversify. They're realizing there's more money in branding than there is actually making, I hate to say it, making music. It's actually, more prolific to actually have a company that does whatever. It could be like a company that does, a clothing line. It could be, like a hot sauce brand. It can be like an alcohol brand. I mean,
dude, let's get our Scott and Ryan hot sauce.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Everyone wants that, of course.
That would be awesome.
That would mean like Michael Anthony does that. There's a few other artists that have those, the hot sauce. I mean, obviously Sammy Hagar is probably the most famous one with the alcohol brand.
Well, tequila, right? Yeah.
The Cabo Wabo thing. And it's, I don't know. I look at that and I think it's awesome in the sense that these guys are smart enough. I mean, God, I think Bret Michaels has some kind of thing on the side. I mean, some of them do.
Oh, I'm sure he does.
Like lifestyle brands where they have like
Rock of Love barbecue sauce.
Yeah, it's something like that. You don't even want to know what the secret ingredient is.
I do not. I do not.
But it's a sad statement in a way, though, because there's so much more, there's more financial windfall to be had by doing something like that if you have enough celebrity to drive it than there is actually going out and making music. You know what I mean? Which is, it's sad to say, because there was a time when that wasn't the case. You can make your fortune being a musician or being a rocker. That nowadays it seems like you can kind of make some income doing that, but you can't live that high level lifestyle unless you're someone with that. Even Alice Cooper arguably is probably more famous and probably makes more money from his endorsements and his commercial appearances and stuff than he does
his golf earnings.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? His
restaurants,
his restaurant empire. He does commercials for all these different companies and stuff. He's kind of like the person du jour for rock star. You go get Alice Cooper, which I love Alice Cooper. I'm not trashing Alice Cooper. I'm just saying things where I feel like those guys. If you have the celebrity to back it up, then of course you go and you do that. You know what I mean? It makes all the sense in the world. Chuck Billy is just, he's a dude that's just so awesome. I think everybody loves Chuck Billy.
Yeah, I'm very glad that Chuck Billy is still around.
Absolutely, and he's still kicking ass too. The last few Testament records have been awesome. They've been great.
I can't think of a Testament album that's a total dud.
I agree. They're not any total. There's some that are better than others. You know what I mean? But they're all great.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And to one degree, it's like the floor is really high with Testament.
I think the cool thing about Testament is that while they're still clearly in a genre, you can hear growth and evolution within the band from album to album.
But also identity too. The identity of Eric Peterson's riffing is right there. And then I think what's funny is when Alex Skolnick came back into that band, I think you realized how much a part of the sound of Testament he was actually, because as much as Eric writes all the stuff, or most of it, or co-writes it with Alex to some of it, the stuff that Alex adds to the mix, like the secondary melody ideas and the soloing ideas, and I'm gonna guess probably something to do with some of the dynamics that he brings in. It really makes it sound like Testament. I remember that first record when they came back. To me, the real comeback record was the Dark Roots of Earth album. That's when they really, and I heard that, I'm like, wow, that is just as good as Practice As You Preach. Or Practice What You Preach, I'm sorry. That's just as good as The Ritual, Souls of Black. It's right in that group. It's that same sort of level of quality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I remember thinking, this is awesome. And then they just kept going from there. I mean, I think they did one before that. Formation of Damnation was with Alex as well.
With Skolnick, yeah.
Yeah, but I felt like that was more similar to the pre-Skolnick being back kind of stuff. It wasn't as fully formed. Dark Roots came out. I thought that's a fully formed. Alex is fully back in the band.
Not as death metal-y.
Yeah, it wasn't as death metal-y, but it was still heavy as hell.
Yeah.
But it had old classic Testament elements, but it had the dynamics and the melodicness to it that was there, and the groove and the amazing solos. The guys who played in Testament when Alex was out of that band were awesome too.
Yeah, didn't James Murphy?
Yeah, James Murphy was there for a while.
Yeah.
There's a few other guys who came in and did some stuff. I can't remember exactly. I know it was a kind of a revolving door for a short time. It was just Eric, and then he'd have an awesome lead player.
Yeah. I'll still say that the intro to the album intro on Demonic has not been topped.
The 666 one.
Yeah, the countdown 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 6, 6, 6. Yeah, it's so great.
That's so cool. I mean, I just think that.
Man, I wish every album started like that.
I feel like that band is, as much as they're a big band, they're still pretty underrated. You know what I mean? They're
hugely underrated.
I mean, everybody knows about that band, but this is one of those things where like they're way better than they get credit for being.
You know, Testament and then Death Angel.
Yeah,
Although really Death Angel kind of went away for a little while, Testament's always been there.
Yeah, Annihilators in that same group. That's another band. That's that thrash group that kind of went away and then kind of came back.
Sort of the second wave of thrash.
I think Death Angel and Testament are second wave. I think Annihilators right there too. I think, and then Overkill's in that second wave as well. There's a lot of great bands. I mean, I don't know. Do you consider Armored Saint a part of that? I don't think so. Those guys are.
I don't feel like Armored Saint's thrash.
No, they're like more traditional metal, I would say.
Yeah,
that kind of thing. But they kind of remind me in that same sort of group. There's a few. I'm sure we're totally Exodus that's actually technically a first wave thrash band.
Right.
You know what I mean? But Death Angel is for sure underrated too. I agree with that.
Yes,
100%.
indeed. Oh, and that reminds me of another topic that I thought we might want to cover. Right?
Okay, we are talking about topics. I thought we were just going to
randomly
riff
dude. I know
today.
we're sort of just riffing on stuff.
Yeah.
So a couple things that have been going on recently. Number one, I finally watched this mini docu-series on Paramount Plus called "I Wanna Rock."
Where's that money, Paramount Plus?
Right. I know.
Promoting your stuff, man.
The docu-series is so good. I really want people to see it.
It's called "I Wanna Rock."
Yeah, the 80's Metal Dream, and it follows There's 4 primary interviews that carry on throughout. One of them is Kip Winger. The other is
the great Kip Winger.
The great Kip Winger.
Yeah.
Yep, and he gets to show everybody how great he is.
Well, I mean, he did. He spent out years making great Winger records. So.
That's kind of what Kip Winger does. He's like, here's this thing I made. I'm awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And I'm sorry that I'm the better looking than you too. It's not my fault. I can't control.
I'm sorry. I'm better looking than you, Lars.
What's that old line, the Kelly LeBrock line? Don't hate me because I'm beautiful.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
And
talented, more talented than you.
Right.
Yeah.
So it also follows Janet Gardner
of Vixen
fame, lead singer from Vixen.
Great singer, actually.
Killer singer.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Great to learn about her background and how she found her way into Vixen, and then what it was like,
navigating what happened. Yep.
Yes, navigating what happened. Well, I'm gonna christen a new word on today's podcast.
Okay, he and I are going to fight about this too. I don't agree with this word, but
yeah, that's okay because I don't know. I guess we're just going to work it out together.
I feel like it's just letting the true culprits off the hook too easily when you start using that.
Dude, I think they're co-conspirators. I think they're okay. That's cool. I will. Okay, I think I can construct a coherent argument on this one.
Keep going. That was right.
Okay, cool. Let's see. It also follows Dave Sabo.
Yep,
Dave the Snake Sabo
from Skid Row. Yeah.
Yeah, from Skid Row, and oh goodness, I'm forgetting somebody now.
Oh, John Corabi, right?
Yeah, John Corabi.
John Corabi from the Scream and Motley Crue, and
and lots of interviews with Vicky Hamilton.
I don't know who that is. Vicky.
So Vicky Hamilton was the original manager for Motley Crue.
Oh, okay. I think I know what you're talking about now.
Okay, and then Motley Crue fires Vicky to when they start to break
Doc,
big, right?
Yeah.
I think it was Doc actually, and so then she ends up managing Poison.
Yep, I remember hearing about this.
And then Poison breaks big, and then she ends up managing Guns N' Roses.
Wow.
Right? And she buys them, she lets them stay at her apartment, buys them a bunch of gear for rehearsals and everything. And then they break big, and then they, the record label has them sign with somebody else. So Vicky Hamilton actually had to sue Guns N' Roses over back rent and all the gear that she bought. Yeah, and she won.
I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? Good on Steven Adler and Slash for giving her a special thanks at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Awards. She still works in the industry. She was an A&R person for, I don't know if it was Columbia or Atlantic.
That's quite the track record right there. If you look at the artists that she worked with, I mean,
dude,
my God.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, and timing, right? Being in the middle of Hollywood during that era.
At that time, yeah.
Yeah.
But still, there's a lot of other bands in Hollywood at that time who didn't become Poison or Guns N' Roses or Motley Crue. You know what I mean?
That's right. There's a lot of great anecdotes about Poison being the hardest working band on the Sunset Strip. They, posting their flyers, like one guy, like they'd pull the car up next to the telephone poles, and one guy would be stirring the glue in the back, and then the other guy would, they had like they had a system for getting this stuff on there, right? They had like their McDonald's speedy system
on the poles.
Yep.
Yeah.
So just hearing how hard all those guys worked to make it, but then also seeing how Vicky kind of got mistreated.
Yeah.
She was a woman working in, a man-dominated, a misogynist industry. Yep. Yeah. So it's a fascinating documentary, and then it takes everybody through, their lives after
the grunge comment hit.
The grunge apocalypse.
Yeah,
but I'm also going to introduce...
Here we go.
Here it comes. I got to thank Ricky Rockman for this.
Okay.
He also features
original MTV VJ host.
I've been trying... Yeah, so I've been trying to find the right word to describe it.
Okay.
And I think I have it now. At the same time that we suffered through the grunge apocalypse, it was also the dawning of the Garth apocalypse.
Yeah. I gotta say, I really think that lets off the grunge bands too easily, because I think
there's enough blame to go around.
Anytime there's a void, like a power vacuum, let's say, then someone's gonna fill that vacuum. So to me, when the grunge thing became big, and it took all the the 80s metal bands away, it kind of went from being a fun celebratory, we're gonna go get our buddies, we're gonna go see the the Bon Jovi show or the Guns N' Roses show or whatever it might be, and we're gonna have a party. It became like, let's go watch Temple of the Dog or Stone Temple Pilots, and they're gonna sing about how much they hate themselves and how life's terrible, and we're gonna stare at the floor and yell and scream and cry. It became like a bummer to go see a rock show. And then in that vacuum of there's no fun in rock anymore, then the country bands just jumped in and said, hey, we can be fun. We can go out and party. We got pickup trucks. You guys like a big show? We put on some fireworks and whatnot.
Yeah, totally.
And then they started doing that.
Yep.
And then people were like, hey, that's pretty fun. And those songs are pretty catchy. And they've got guitar solos too. And they've got cool,
they don't. Okay, I'm going to correct you on that one. They don't have cool anything.
Well, okay, what I'm trying to say is the average person who's a fan of, say, Bon Jovi or Poison or Def Leppard would see a lot of the same things that draw them to that band in a band like, let's say, Garth Brooks or Brooks and Dunn, and those bands in that same time period that came out that were really popular. They would see like a connective tissue there, and it's still a big, essentially, rock show, even though it's quote unquote country. And I think that it wasn't so much about anything that the country artists did as much as there was a power vacuum that they just stepped into and filled.
Well, absolutely.
And then the rock bands just continue to have a race to the bottom. Let's see who can write the most unlistenable music. What's the most, hardcore, amelodic, anti-listenable music? Let's just keep going down to the bottom.
And for all of our listeners out there, Scott didn't mean a melodic minor. That would have been cool. He meant non-melodic.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like basically no hooks. Let's make it as dark and scream every time we can. And it essentially became
I'm with you on the grunge
let's
apocalypse.
have such cred. We make our music so terrible no one can like it. For whatever reason, that's a thing.
So, you know what? So that also raises another. Well, so here's my premise. Okay. So on one hand, you've got the grunge apocalypse. Okay. So now that's driven
on the one hand of doom.
Right. On the one hand of doom.
Yeah.
So I mean, think about the state of rock music, right? Being musically awesome.
And we're talking about like in 1991, right?
Well, I mean, and then like what was great during the 80s.
Yeah, okay.
And actually, you know what?
This is like when the changeover started happening, like 92-ish is when the changeover started happening.
Yeah, well, I mean, and let's go even further, right? In the 70s, rock was fun. In the 60s, rock felt dangerous to the status quo.
Yeah, it's true.
Right? And so in the 80s, you kind of had this perfect storm where rock music was both fun, but it also felt kind of dangerous too, right?
Yep.
Now there's two forces at play, right? One is the record companies that want to, homogenize things and exploit artists to earn profits.
Yeah, because they see art as a widget to be sold, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now, with the dawn of MTV, the rock bands could get bigger, right? But
quicker. Yeah. You could have a big hit video. Next thing you know, you could be an arena headliner like a year later. Not even that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, big personalities, colorful outfits and stage presentations, right? All that
Visual
stuff.
Visual became extremely important. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, right. So but these bands could also feel dangerous, right? I mean, how many times have we heard Guns N' Roses as being described as quote unquote dangerous?
Yeah.
Skid Row, right? Like, Sebastian Bach could jump off stage and throw a beer bottle at your head.
Yeah, that's true.
Not that I'm condoning that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. It was also kind of anti-establishment, sort of find your own way kind of thing, fuck the man sort of attitude, you know what I mean?
Totally. You've got the PMRC, you know what I mean? It's so that was the state of things, right? A song like Youth Gone Wild has meaning because that was the zeitgeist, right?
Yep.
So on one hand, you've got all the corporate overlords, right?
Yep. Who, by the way, no matter what happens beneath them, they will always continue to be overlords. They will continue reaping profits either way the wind blows.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
Dude,
just,
you know it.
Yeah.
And I'll try and step through this gingerly. So like and then on the other side, you've got the PMRC crowd.
Yep.
Right? And you've got all the hysteria about satanic panic and, well,
also the sex, like, the idea of like the open sex.
You've got the moral majority folks, on the right.
They're going to make our daughters whores and they're going to make them Satanists and stuff like that,
Right. Let's just, whatever hysteria, right? Not the Def Leppard album, but.
Which is great, by the way.
Right? So.
Ironically, Def Leppard's one of those bands that I think that most of the people in that time period could really grab a hold of and enjoy. Because I think even if you're like they're fun, dangerous. Like, we're just fun dudes. Like, come on, it's gonna be fun. It wasn't like we're dangerous. We're not gonna go wreck cars or go do heroin or something and all that. It's it was much more.
Yeah, it was like rock and roll.
It was more
less
fun. It's something like a mom and a daughter could go to a Def Leppard concert and have a good time because it's music that they both would enjoy.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So
Def Leppard definitely was accessible to a wide.
Bon Jovi similarly.
Yeah,
right?
totally agreed.
Yeah.
Totally agreed.
By the way, two of the bigger eras still around, Def Leppard and Bon Jovi.
Yeah, that's right. And
something to be said
Skid
for
Row's
that.
still around, although they've gone through singer changes.
Not nearly at the level of those other two bands, though.
Totally true.
You know what I mean? Those.
Well, you could argue Bon Jovi's kind of gone towards the Garth apocalypse a little bit.
Not kind of. They totally have.
Yeah.
They've come a weird like hybrid of like Bruce Springsteen and like Garth Brooks. That's kind of what current Bon Jovi is. You know what I mean? I think largely because John was never a rocker to start with, and I think he's kind of lost his voice, so he feels okay kind of warbling over these kind of more country songs rather than trying to be, screaming and being a rock singer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can only transpose "Living on a Prayer" down so many keys.
This is drop A.
Right.
Whoa, we're halfway there.
Hey, that might be cool.
Whoa.
Living on a prayer. Right, do the death metal.
That's actually a very good approximation of John's current voice.
Why, thank you. Yeah. John Corpse Grinder Bon Jovi.
Napalm Jovi.
Oh my goodness, too good.
It is too good.
Yes.
I was a fan of Bon Jovi. I mean, to me, they've got two albums I really love, which is, of course, Slippery and New Jersey. I think those are great.
Great.
And there's parts of the ones bookending. I think 7800 Fahrenheit's got some good stuff, and I think Keep the Faith's got some good stuff, too.
Yeah, agreed.
But that's about the total great Bon Jovi stuff right there, I think. But it's great. I mean, I love it. I hear, like, Wild in the Streets or, Raise Your Hand, that kind of thing.
Yeah, such good stuff.
Killer, you know what I mean? And obviously, even like Never Say Goodbye, great ballad. Killer ballad.
Well, I mean, that was a killer band made up of kind of like all unknown all-star guys, right? They'd all been
Sam
working
Bora is great, man. I've always been a fan of Sam Bora.
Bora's great. Alec John Such was great. Like he led bands in New Jersey before they got
Tico and Dave Bryan are
Torres,
no dummies either. I mean, that whole band is made up of great players. You know what I mean?
Yeah, ace players for sure.
For sure. Tico was a session guy before. That's how they found him. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But I think by the way, Tim Pierce, the session guitarist, actually played guitar on the first Bon Jovi album.
Oh, really?
Not a lot of people know that, which is kind of crazy.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. So when they got Richie into the band, obviously Richie kind of took over. But it's like, and how lucky are we, man? I mean, because not only is he a great guitar player, a great performer, he's also a great songwriter. And that's, to me, the thing that Bon Jovi is missing is that he need that other guy. You need that other like voice in the room to kind of move it. I mean, I don't have any illusions that Richie's going to come back into the band and all of a sudden it's going to be like, big rockers again and stuff like that, but it might have some semblance of a rock and roll pulse to it. You know what I mean?
And I don't even know. They have some sort of personal falling out or something.
I think it was drugs or something. I think that Richie kind of got a little out there for a while.
Got it.
I remember, who's the Orianthe was dating him for a while.
Orianthe Panagiris.
Yeah, and then she, of course, dumped him, and then she went and moved on to someone a lot more stable.
Tommy Lee?
Tracy Guns.
Oh. Okay. Didn't she get the memo after you dump Richie Sambora you're supposed to get with Tommy Lee for a while?
That's true, huh?
She clearly did not consult with Pamela Anderson and Heather Locklear. Yeah.
She's breaking the rules.
God, rock really is dead when a woman can break up with Richie Sambora and not go straight to Tommy Lee.
Exactly.
What's the world coming to?
He's busy doing other things, you know what I mean? He's rapping now and doing DJ work. You know
of course he is.
Yeah, so. But what also makes me very sad is that I understand and know who Orianthe's dating, and that actually makes me really sad that I know that.
Hey, I should get points for knowing what her full name is.
Yeah, it's very cool. I'm
right?
sorry, man. That was kudos. I didn't put enough respect on her name for that.
Everybody.
She actually is a good guitar player.
Yeah,
and
she really
played
is.
with Alice for a while. I mean,
she played with
and Michael
MJ.
Jackson. Yeah,
at the time of his demise.
Yeah, it's so crazy, man. I think I don't know. I look at that, and I think that whole time period, as much as the country music did fill the void, like once the rock thing came out of style, I think that filled the void. But I think the void was created by grunge, and I think about the industry completely going whole hog on grunge and just offsetting, you're saying, okay, screw everything that came before it, we're going to just do this. It's all about real. That's what people want. They want real.
On one side, right, and maybe you could say that it felt a little dangerous, I guess. I mean,
I don't think they felt it was more down to earth. I remember hearing like, "Oh, this is more real. This is more real."
Right.
And I remember thinking like, "There's nothing real about this."
Yeah,
this
there was all that crap.
Yeah, it strikes me as a certain crowd thought that was more real, and I guess looking at the bands like Dokken and Whitesnake and Winger and Skid Row, all these great bands, White Lion, and they just didn't see it was very accessible because the guitar playing was so like off the charts. It was like so bigger than life. Everything about the guitar playing, the riffs, the singing, the stage show was so bigger than life.
Yep.
That they looked at that and said, well, these bands kind of suck. I can imagine playing that. Yep. And so it's more real. You know what I mean?
I don't really get I think we've talked about that before. I don't ever remember great guitar players being intimidating.
Yeah, exactly. It's inspiring is what it is.
It's aspirational. Yeah. That's right.
This is what I could be. You know what I mean? Same thing. I know people say like, oh, when they heard Eruption, I threw my guitar out the window. I'm like, why would you do that? Go learn Eruption. And learn how to play that shit. And do your own thing.
Spend some time working on it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, don't give up. That's someone leading the way. That's someone with a torch at the front of the cave saying, this is the way.
That's right.
And then come follow me. And then, I don't get it. To me, the 80s, and I actually talked with a guy who worked in retail at that time, and he was telling me how much the 90s were better for retail than the 80s. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, that's
the 80s
absurd.
was the land of guitar heroes. Like, everywhere you turn around, there's another great guitar player. It's like, yeah, but nobody could play that stuff. I'm like, yeah, they could. I knew people who could play that stuff back in the day.
Sure, me too, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
my guitar teachers could.
Yeah, exactly. I don't understand that idea at all. So, and why would you be inspired to play by Kurt Cobain? I don't get that at all. He's nothing. Like, have you taken 3 guitar lessons? Okay, cool. You've got all the technical know-how that Kurt Cobain has. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
So I just don't understand how that's in any way going to make someone want to pick up a guitar. I can see it makes you want to pick up a heroin needle or maybe crash your car or something. But I can't understand how that makes you want to play guitar.
Wear flannel in July.
Yeah, whenever I meet someone who's a huge hardcore Nirvana fan, I'm always like, I don't know what we're going to talk about. What do you like about this band?
I wholeheartedly agree with you on everything you just said.
There we go. We're going to clip that. That's going to be something that's replayed over and over again every podcast.
Well, I mean, I don't usually disagree with you. That's fine. I have saved every text from Misty where she tells me I'm right about something.
Nice. Very cool. That's a smart move.
That's the key to a happy relationship.
It's true. That is true.
I mean, I just got to get my wins.
Backs yourself up too.
Yes, exactly.
It's almost like backing up your account information in hard drive. Thanks for listening to the Rock Guitar Confidential Podcast with Ryan and Scott. Please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. Now back to the show.
So as that's happening, the Garth-pocalypse happens, okay? So on one hand, you have the grunge-pocalypse, right, where I have this theory that, record companies are like, hey, every year we have to have more and more talented bands, and there's fewer and fewer of them. And yeah, I know, like, it is true there were some bands that were getting signed that maybe weren't as good as the ones that came before them. I get that. I get that.
Yeah, they kind of became a parody of itself. You know,
Right,
that really
right.
happened to grunge too. It was the same thing. Every movement there becomes like this thing where they'll assign any band that sort of vaguely looks or
Yeah,
sounds like this.
the
other
candle
band.
boxes of the world.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's way worse. Kind of coming later on than that, and now it's like
Yes,
you have these like copies of like Disturbed and Godsmack, which is like horrific. Like, why would you do that? Oh my god,
God, why are we even still talking about Godsmack?
dude, get ready because we're gonna start having a whole wave of nostalgia for bro metal coming very soon.
Yeah. You know, they've been
what I
trying to
mean?
kind of kick that off with some
The
more
Creeds
mentions
and
of
Disturbs and Godsmacks
Limp
of the world.
Bizkits.
Limp Bizkit, Korn. That's coming
dude,
back because
bruh.
there's a whole generation. While you and I were like in the caves trying to survive in the
Yeah.
wasteland, there's a whole generation of people who grew up thinking that was the greatest thing that's ever happened.
Oh, man.
You know what I mean? And
So that would be a ripe topic, right? Like, what's better, dealing with the Nirvana nostalgia or dealing with the Limp Bizkit nostalgia?
I would take I don't understand either, I'll be honest, because it was so
Dude.
horrible. But that being said, I mean, I think there's some redeemable qualities to like Creed and Godsmack and Disturbed. At least there's some redeemable qualities.
I mean, definitely not the vocals, but
not much. I mean, not much, but there's more. Or at least they really sound like a rock band.
Draymond from Disturbed isn't
Like
bad.
Papa
but-
Roach and those kind of things. I just feel like there's that whole era of band. What's the other one? What's the one that did like the
Deftones.
Deftones. They're a Sacramento band, so props to them.
Hell yeah.
But that being said, I've never understood the Deftones either. I don't. They're not really heavy. They aren't great players.
Deftones are kind of
I mean,
more like, I feel like they're sort of they've got an atmospheric kind of
Yeah,
sound.
but there's nothing
you know,
I
it's a
really
different.
grab a hold of in that band that I really love. There's not solos. There's not great riffs. It doesn't have awesome hooks or songs. It's heavy. It's not really that proggy. It's kind of nothing. I can't put my hand on that at all. Like what that is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a hard time. I don't dislike Deftones. I just their sound is their sound. It's their thing and more power.
Yeah, I agree.
But,
They've got a sound. They definitely have a unique sound, but I don't understand what that sound is. I try and I listen to them. I'm like, okay, when's something cool gonna happen?
Yeah. Okay, so here's my theory, right?
It's like a band like Tool, by the way, which I put in that same sort of box as Deftones. Tool's got some moments like that was cool. That was a cool part. That was
Yeah,
a cool
undeniably,
section.
yeah.
But the Deftones, I'm waiting for something like that to happen. I'm waiting for a cool moment to happen.
You know, let me put it this way. I've had some students bring Deftones songs to me to learn, and I mean, I enjoyed teaching them that thing, and I can't remember what angle I took,
Yeah.
but like, I mean, I don't remember any of those songs.
There's no memorable anything. It's just a
they're all
weird,
kind of like dreamy.
yeah, they wash
kinda-
over you, sort of, but they're not
Yeah.
really a heavy band either. There's not really any heaviness to it. There's not any like power grooves of any kind.
Yeah,
It's-
if they're not, they don't seem very groovy to me. But again, you know, maybe there's some stuff I haven't heard. I don't know. So
yeah,
I gotta be
it's,
careful.
whatever
about.
it is, it's not for me. I mean, more power to any Sacramento band.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
absolutely. Respect
There's
for sure. But
there's most certainly parts of the Deftones catalog that I haven't heard that might give me a more complete view. So
sure.
I can't. Really,
I would agree with that. I haven't listened to enough to really have an overview.
Yeah, like
but-
I just was never really on. Was never on the boat. Like
Yeah.
I was, you know, maybe I was a little too old when they broke.
I think that's true, and I
You
think
know?
a lot of the grunge thing too. I think what we're seeing with the grunge thing and then with the bro metal thing in the late '90s is sort of a changing of the guard. You know, the grunge thing was sort of the people who unfortunately were our age, who decided that they wanted to like have their own thing. We're more real, we're more raw than the previous generation. You know, we're all about keeping it real.
Yeah, but they never stopped to think like, is raw enough to be good?
It's but they don't
No.
even think about that. Just it was more about the image and the attitude than it was about the music.
Right,
And I
which
think-
which means they became exactly what their criticism of the 80s rockers.
ironic.
Ironic.
And then when
yeah,
the bro metal thing came out, it said, "Hey, can we also be raw, but let's get way dumber."
yeah, dude, and I mean, there were issues in the broader culture, like particularly the objectification of women that went on in the 80s. That was not good. But goddamn, if it wasn't worse.
Yeah.
You know, like, well, dude, go review what happened at Woodstock '99.
Oh, agreed.
you
That,
know?
that's just a sign of a society being like, you know, shitty, just a shitty society. You know what I mean? And,
Yes.
And that maybe the music was a reflection of the shittiness of the society. Who knows at that point? But you and I, we grew up on something that was more celebratory. I thought even as much as there's objectification of women in the 80s, it felt like inclusive. Like we're all going to go party together and have fun. And chicks like sex, dudes like sex. You know what I mean? It's all good.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It was kind of like, it was that kind of attitude. It wasn't so much like, oh, we're going to exploit this woman. It was more like, hey, everyone's here to party and have fun.
And dude, it
Yeah.
was largely inclusive.
Yep.
You know, I mean, with when
That being said, considering it was almost entirely made up of straight, cisgendered, you know, white people.
well, you know what they do mention, Sebastian Bach wearing a very unfortunate shirt that, I mean, I won't repeat it on this podcast, but
I don't even know what
the homophobic, it was, it was against the gay community.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
With the Raid can.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah,
so enough to where I won't repeat it. So like
that's horrible. Yeah.
bad on Bass
Sebastian.
for that, right? And the backlash he received was warranted. That's I think that's one of the reasons that he never came back to the band, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that has just his difficulty to be dealt with. I mean, that's what I've heard. But
just total ignorance, not awesome, unacceptable, right? I get that, but man, like when Rob Halford came out, total acceptance from the metal community.
Well, he's the metal god. That's partially why, you know what I mean?
Hell yeah, man. So what a hero Rob is, right?
Exactly. I mean, in that genre, and that's so brave to come out and be authentically who you are in that. And that it reminds me of like NFL players. If an NFL player comes out and he's gay, it's like that takes so much courage in the very machismo sort of based kind of thing, and then metal is very much like that, for sure.
So then let's review, right? So in the rock and metal community, when you wear a crappy T-shirt like Sebastian did, you get condemned for it.
Yep.
Right. When Rob Halford comes out, he's universally supported, right?
Yep.
Okay, so that rock and metal, man. So it's celebratory. It's the community, all of these positive factors, right? So. Again, we've talked a lot about the grunge apocalypse. I think that finding grunge artists, there's a deeper pool of lower talent guitar players out there.
I think.
Although we're gonna give Jerry Cantrell a pass. I think he's awesome.
Alice in Chains would have worked any time.
Alice in Chains would have worked any time.
Yeah. But I think it's really more about the image, and then having like, we're going to take this Pepsi and we're going to put a new brand on it, and that's basically what it was. It wasn't so much about the talent of the musicians, because I think they could find great guitar players forever if they wanted to. It wasn't that. It was more like, okay, we need to have something that we can rebrand rock and sell it to a new generation.
Right, flannel instead of leather.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And that's basically what it was. It was more of a marketing thing than anything else. And that, I remember being really disappointed in humanity at that time. Like, everyone just like, oh, okay, well, I guess Bon Jovi's not cool. Sweet, right. Who am I supposed to like now? Oh, okay, I like Nirvana. It's like, it was exactly the attitude of people, around me.
I like Garth Brooks.
Yeah, exactly. But it was one of those two. But like, I was like, fuck that, man. I'm still listening to Van Halen and Winger and Whitesnake. I'm not doing that shit. You know what I mean? Like, you guys can all jump off that cliff and lemming off that cliff if you want.
Agreed.
Or maybe I'm the lemming jumping off the cliff, but if I am, I'm only following my own ass, not anyone else's. You know what I mean?
Well, then you would then by definition no longer be a lemming.
That's true. But if I were to lemming myself off a cliff, it would be my own doing, not following the other lemmings. You know what I mean?
I'd be with you, dude. Yeah. So there'd be the two of us.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I guess we'd be a lemming pack of two.
But that being said, we saw a couple articles that were kind of interesting from Kip. One from Kip, where he talked about how he's connected with James Hetfield from Metallica. Because obviously, anybody who doesn't know, famously in the Nothing Else Matters video, there's a scene in that where Lars is throwing darts at a pinup of Kip Winger. And this was, early 90s. So Winger was still kind of at the height of their fame at that point. And Kip, if you guys know who Kip Winger is, he's a ridiculously good-looking dude, and he was like mid-20s, late 20s at that time. So he did
some pinup stuff.
He's like the most beautiful human you've ever seen in your life at this time. So it's a picture of this incredibly looking. He looks like a guy from like a magazine cover or something.
Well,
like that.
It was a pinup from a magazine.
Well, you know what I mean. But I'm talking about it could be like probably a fashion magazine or something. Like it was like he's like a model.
It was probably from the Playgirl shoot that he did.
Could be, and then
it was probably the centerfold from the Playgirl.
He hits it with darts, and then right on the heels of that, Beavis and Butthead comes out, and Stewart's wearing a Winger t-shirt, and then it just went completely to hell. But apparently Kip was saying that what he said that James called him or something, right?
Well, I mean, I guess James has called him and said like that wasn't cool, and he probably said yeah or whatever. James
is actually a pretty good dude, nowadays. You know what I mean?
I mean, I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, man, I have some more Metallica.
From what I've heard about James, he seems like he's kind of guy. I know he did the acoustic for The Cure with Sammy not too long ago.
Nice.
And all this. He's really doing some. And they actually, Metallica just announced that they've got like some kind of scholarship fund they're going to be using to help support music programs and stuff like that. So that's awesome. That's the people who've done well, passing it forward to the next people.
That's good, man.
That's all very laudable stuff. And I think reaching out to Kip Winger when he didn't have to do that, he could just keep being with James Hetfield from Metallica. That was actually a real thing. I mean, it's just
that's a class move. Yeah. I mean, it's too little, too late.
Well, I mean, Winger's really rebounded in the last 10 years. They really have gotten to the point now where they can make a living touring and putting out records again. And
what's great about that is that they did that on the strength of their musical ability. Yep. I mean, talk about
overcoming, man. They had to overcome all this just people not even giving them a chance because of the name of the band.
And it's interesting to hear all of that in context because it also starts at the beginning, right? Like how Kit built his music career and like how hard he had to work to get that first Winger album recorded, and basically he could have stayed in Alice Cooper forever and ever. Amen.
Apparently he called in a favor with Beau Hill to get signed to Atlantic, and they didn't even get a great deal or anything, just got in the door.
Yeah, they took whatever deal.
Very much ripe to be signed, written off and just dropped. You know what I mean?
That's
that kind of thing. But they put out a record and it hit, and not just Kip's ability, but the whole band's ability, the writing and performing, and great players, great
John Taylor and Rod Morgenstein.
Wow. And then Reb Beach. You can't forget Reb. He's the other guy.
Well, I mean, I don't think Winger really happens the same way without Reb.
Nope.
I mean, he's so integral to
his playing
sound.
was so different and stood out even then.
Yep.
Amongst great guitar players, he had his own piece of turf that was his own.
Seems like such a nice guy too.
Yeah, I've talked to Reb a couple times, and he's a really nice guy, and he's a great guitar player. I mean, everyone knows he's a great guitar player. I think the hate for Winger is something we cover in this podcast quite a lot, mainly because this band that I see as being the most wronged of all the bands when the grunge thing happened. That they were like the ones who unfortunately,
absolutely, they bore all the brunt.
Well, not all, but the
most of
tip of the spear went through the forehead of Winger basically when that happened. You know what I mean? And then all the other bands got destroyed.
The tip of the dart, if you will.
Yeah, the tip of the heroin needle.
The tip of Lars' dart.
I kind of see it more of the needle of Cobain that destroyed them all.
Yes, well, but, referencing the nothing else.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I get you.
Yeah.
But what's funny? Then there's another interview that you talked about with Sabo, or Snake Sabo from Skid Row, where he was being very conciliatory towards like a lot of the bands that came in their wake, and talking about how the hair metal thing just kind of ran its course and then things end and stuff like that. And I thought that was, from his perspective, I'm sure it didn't feel like that at the time. I'm sure he was filled with a lot of anger and like confusion about what was going on.
Yeah, well, and Dave also gets into some mental health struggles that he had and their origins. I mean, I think it's pretty brave of him to talk about everything. Again, you'll have to read the interviews and watch the documentary. That's his story to tell.
Yeah.
But my takeaway from that was just like what a special band Skid Row was and is.
Yeah, I mean they still survived. I mean, much like Winger, they're still doing it.
And I mean, when their first album came out, they topped the genre.
Yeah.
Right. If you compare that first Skid Row album, and Slave to the Grind, right? Well, I mean, I think there's a different story for both of those.
Well, I think if you look at the first Skid Row album, it was an album that came out. They were sort of seen as like the under the wing of Bon Jovi, so they kind of were expected to be a little bit more on the pop side. And the first album was much, much heavier than the Bon Jovi, but they did have the, I Remember You, they had the 18 in Life, they had like the pop ballads.
Which are so listenable, man.
Which also, they had great parts in those, they have great solos, cool dynamics. I mean, those are actually really well-written songs, too.
Yep.
And I think they also had like the heaviness, like Making a Mess and, Piece of Me, and obviously Youth Gone Wild.
Big Guns.
Stuff. Yeah, really heavy stuff for the time, too. Not like thrash, but like heavy metal.
I distinctly remember not fast-forwarding through the ballads on that Skid Row album.
It's a great album, actually. Yeah. And then they came out Slave to the Grind, also a great album, but different. They kind of got a lot heavier with that. They got a little bit borderline thrashy on some spots.
Yeah, they got heavier when every other band on their sophomore release was getting balladier.
Yeah. Although they had a couple great ballads on that album, too.
Killer.
Really good.
Yeah, In a Darkened Room is awesome.
Quicksand Jesus.
Epic.
Yeah, it's great stuff. You know what I mean? And so I think that those guys kind of were an interesting band because they didn't break till, I think, 89? I think it's the first album came out. So they got a chance to go out and tour with Bon Jovi.
Yeah, I guess 89.
And then they had the second one come out like in 91, I want to say. So that was still in, you could still be an 80s metal band in 91.
Yeah.
But they were there for the turnover like in 92, 93. When all of a sudden, they went from their opening for Bon Jovi, now they're a headliner, and they have like Pantera and Alice in Chains opening for them, and Soundgarden opening for them, which was...
Yeah, I feel like Skid Row is like a glimpse into what rock music could have, the direction it could have continued going.
I was hoping it was going to... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, just if we hadn't had the grunge and the Garth apocalypse, which I still have thoughts on, by the way.
All right, well, I'm going to get to those thoughts, but I think that... To me, that you're right. Skid Row was great. I think bands like Living Colour and Saigon Kick were where I was hoping it was going to go. It was like way more diverse, a little bit more proggy.
I love Living Colour, man. We could talk about Living Colour.
Well, Saigon Kick is like that too, and The Extreme is another band like that too, where they're just a bunch of different sides of the band. They're not a one-dimensional band at all.
Right.
And I was hoping it was going to go in that direction, but still great, like top-notch playing, top-notch songwriting, that kind of thing. And we didn't get that. We ended up going, let's race to the bottom.
Race to the bottom, or join the Garthpocalypse.
Okay, let's hear your thoughts on the Garthpocalypse. I'm kind of curious because to me, I don't see that as a co-conspirator with the death of metal.
No, they definitely are because
well, no, because then you can really blame all the fans who abandoned rock and said,
I totally do. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know that's necessarily the artist's fault necessarily.
Well, so I think the forces of the Garthpocalypse are the same forces. Think back to the PMRC hearings. Right?
Yeah.
Wanting
Snyder,
to put, exactly. Put explicit labels. It just, all that stuff sucks because it's safe.
Yeah.
Right? Man.
Well, I don't know. I think that the reason that, you can't talk, well, I guess you can, but you can't, people don't get passionate about something if it's made of crap. Garth Brooks is one of the highest selling artists of all time, right up there with the Beatles and Michael Jackson, not because he sucks.
I didn't, the musicianship is fine, but
the songwriting's good too. It's
fine. Dude, I just, as soon as,
songwriting is such a powerful thing, man.
I know.
At the end of the day, I think that really, if you don't have the songs, you don't have anything. I don't care how great a player you are. I don't care how terrible a player you are. If you have great songs, you're going to have a career. That's
agreed. I totally agree.
And look at right now. What's the biggest artist in the world right now? Taylor Swift. Right, she's easily the biggest artist in the world.
Agreed.
This is a person who, dude, I found this out and it blew my mind. Do you know that Taylor Swift is doing 6 straight nights sold out at SoFi Stadium in LA?
That's great.
6 nights.
I'm totally pro Taylor Swift.
I can't even get my head around that, dude. There's that Metallica on the Black Album couldn't do 2 nights at SoFi back then. I know how big the Black Album was. That just gives you scale that up for how big Taylor Swift is.
Dude, I'm totally pro that. I'm expressing my disappointment for any rock fans that thought that, tucking your shirt into your jeans and wearing a silly hat.
Well, the Scootin' Boogie was fun.
No, it wasn't, Scott. No.
I didn't take... you know me, man. I sat in a bunker and practiced my sweeper pages throughout the 90s.
Look, everybody can like everything, but, the seeing so much of the rock audience move over to the Garthpocalypse. It's just, that's just safe stuff.
Those are the casuals, though, man. Those are the people who are casual. They're people who just want to, hey, it's Sunday or Saturday night. I want to go out and party with my friends and drink some beers and see a fun show. That's all they want. They don't care about the music that much. If you talk to them about the music, they probably couldn't name you past the first 2 big hit songs. They wouldn't know anything else, and they just want to go have a good time.
And without going into great detail, I feel like, although there's some artists in that current genre that are not problematic, it's almost like you have to subscribe to a certain culture and a handful of viewpoints.
Well, that's our culture
in that genre,
and that's changing, by the way. That's definitely changing.
And you know what? To be fair, Garth isn't a bad guy at all,
no.
Right?
Most of those artists aren't bad guys. I don't think Jason Aldean is a bad guy. I don't think that Keith Urban's a bad guy. Yeah. Okay, maybe you found some other stuff, but
I'm not gonna endorse Jason Aldean.
Okay, fair enough.
At all.
All right, but
anyway, I don't want to get.
I don't think they're evil people. They're just.
Well, I don't even. Evil's a meaningless word to me.
Dude, you're a King Diamond fan. You better take that back.
Right. Well, except for Merciful Fate. Yes. So anyway, it's just, you know what, man. Going to see Garth Brooks isn't. Rock and roll is the language of rebellion, man. And
that's what it was.
That's what it was. And you used to be able to express your. You could be youth gone wild in your angst and
you're partying we're gonna go raise our hands and have fun and drive a car fast and meet a girl.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. But now it's I can drive a truck.
Yeah.
And there's some corn.
A lot of the same stuff. Hey, corn trucks.
This episode.
I will be damned if I stand by and watch you besmirch the good name of corn trucks.
This episode brought to you by Corn Trucks, a balanced part of your breakfast. It just bums me out, man, because I feel like the rise of new country. It makes me feel like the PMRC won.
If it makes you feel any better,
it makes me feel like Jerry Falwell won.
New country is now seen as embarrassing amongst the young people too, though. So that's also the music of my dad. Anybody who listens, anything with a guitar, I hate to say it, anything with a guitar and people singing, whether it be John Mayer or Garth Brooks or Keith Urban or Motley Crue, is seen as my dad's music to people who are 20
or young blood.
Yeah, yeah, but he doesn't really play guitar. He kind of hits a keyboard on
There's a guitar sound.
Yes, exactly. But what I'm trying to say, though, is the vast majority of people in their early 20s, late teens, anything that's like that is seen as my dad's music. That's not seen as their... Same way that when we were kids, we didn't see Frank Sinatra You know, that we didn't see, you know, like Glenn
I don't
Campbell wasn't our music back in the day. You know what I mean?
But I remember when I was a teenager, you know, dude, me and my buddy used to get drunk and sing Fly Me to the Moon.
No,
you know, I mean, like Frank Sinatra was still considered.
We didn't think it was lame, but it wasn't our music. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I didn't feel like it was my music, but there was sort of like a cool respect for you know what, Old Blue Eyes.
Yeah, would kick your ass too. You wouldn't say bad sideways word to him. You kidding me?
Yeah, you know, like we looked back on like all that Rat Pack stuff with like a certain like reverence, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. So it wasn't.
Well, those guys were still making movies in the late 70s too. I remember seeing like Sammy Davis Jr. and those guys in like Cannonball Run when I was a kid and stuff. And that was like 82 or something.
Cannonball Run.
But that's what I mean. They were all revered, you know, like Dean Martin and those guys were like revered as like old Hollywood.
The old lions,
the old Hollywood. Yeah, exactly. That was that. But they were like the coolest dudes in the movie. That one's like, oh my god, that's Dean Martin. You know what I mean? It's like That's kind of what we're talking about. I think. Nowadays, it's sort of been turned around. I think if you look at hey, that's Vince Neil or that's whoever James Hetfield. People look at them in the same kind of reverence. The guys are legit. It's Axl Rose. You know what I mean?
I love I love how Wolfgang Van Halen's been embraced.
Yeah, and his own on his own rights too. I mean, totally. He's not just getting grandfather's in because his dad was amazing. It's like, well, this kid's got something to say too, and he's good.
Yeah, and he writes apparently he's a multi-instrumentalist that writes every part.
Yeah, and sings. Does the whole thing. Yeah, he's brilliantly talented. Yeah, he's not his dad. That's so smart. He's not trying to be his dad. He still plays guitar and he can play great too. He's a great player.
Absolutely, man.
But it's one of those things where they always say your dad's name gets you in the door, but it doesn't keep you there. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that if he didn't have anything to offer, he wouldn't still be having
just ask Will Smith's kids.
That's what I mean. And I think eventually we're going to look 20 years from now and Wolfgang Van Halen's going to be seen as having respect in his own right. Not just because his dad was who he was. You know what I mean? And
so props to Wolfie.
Yeah, for sure. But I feel like you and I couldn't see where things were going back in the day when we were young guitar players. We thought that rock and roll was going to forever be the biggest thing. And then when it wasn't, and then we ended up stuck in the woods of this grunge apocalypse / Garth apocalypse. I'll give you that response.
Thank you, Garth apocalypse trademark.
We just figured at some point it's going to come back around, but it did now. Except for now, it's really only come back around for the bands who were big then. You know what I mean? So the Motley Crues and the Guns N' Roses and the Metallicas and the Def Leppards can go out and have ACDCs come out and do massive tours and be doing great, but it's really only them. The rest of the rock and roll thing is still kind of not really any better off than they were in the late 90s. It's that same sort of cliche, not cliche, but sort of niche.
Yeah.
Sort of niche.
Well, there's the band's doing agreed. Yeah. It's a niche. Well, and then there is, as you said before, there's no mainstream culture. Everything's very curated and
it's a bunch of little bubble cultures that people create for themselves. There's not really anything we all share,
right?
You know what I mean? It's kind of weird. It's a weird time for that. I think that when you try and talk to somebody who's young about that, like under 20, the idea that they don't have the same culture as their neighbor might have, that they listen to and are aware of a completely different part of culture than the people that they know. Everyone's got their own unique curated thing. That didn't used to be the way it was. Like when a new movie came out, everyone was talking about that new movie. When a new Van Halen album came out, oh dude, the new Van Halen's out Thursday, whatever. Like, oh dude, we gotta get. Everybody knew about that when it happened. Everyone listened to the same radio stations. Everyone heard the same culture. Everyone was exposed to the same culture.
Yeah, there were 3 news channels.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And nowadays it's pick your culture, whatever you want, and then you could. There's these bands that are massively huge, but outside that bubble, no one's ever heard of them.
Yep, that's scary stuff, man.
Yeah. It reminds me of that Family Guy thing when they were talking about YouTubers and they started mentioning, yes, one day we could be famous like Jenna Marbles. And he's like, who's that? Yeah. Nobody knows, but she's famous. It's really true. That's where we're going. It's like
that's hilarious.
There's all these little fiefdoms that have their own massive little empire that only them and their them and their little group know about them, and they think they're the biggest thing in the world.
Jenna Marbles. That's hilarious.
How many times have you had a student come in and they go, oh, I'm super into this artist. I'm like, oh, who is it? It's like, Jimmy Two-Tone, fluffy buttons or something.
Dude, my favorite is Sparky Deathcap.
This is what exactly, and that's not even made up. Mine was made up. Yours is not made up.
Yeah, mine's not made up. There really is a Sparky Deathcap. Who the hell is this person? And 10
million followers or something like that. It's
and you know what? I got to give props to Mr. Deathcap because he not only does he
garners that respect.
Yes, that's what it says on his checks. That's Sparky P. Deathcap.
To you, sir.
Yes, to you, sir.
Good day, sir.
So Mr. So Mr. Deathcap the second, he actually releases, he does sort of like a Beck thing where he releases the sheet music for his stuff.
Oh, okay.
And then he also plays a lot of banjo.
Oh, that's too bad.
I don't know why, but you know what? Props to Mr. Deathcap for like actually putting sheet music in the world. Because then my student and I can talk about what it means to read sheet music.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's a valuable, that's time well spent.
And a beautiful illustration of my point that like, there's not any one culture anymore. There's like 1,000 cultures all happening simultaneously. You know what I mean? And we're part of that. Look what we're doing here in our little corner of the world. We're we're definitely a part of that too. And I think that's just it's not going back. I don't think there's gonna be a time where like, hey, we should all just do the same culture again. I don't think that's ever that genius.
Well, yeah, of course not.
You know what I mean?
Of course not.
We've got to look back and just try and explain to the people who are younger than us, like, hey, at one point everyone kind of experienced the same reality.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's
and
right.
That doesn't happen anymore. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's a good place to wrap it up.
Indeed. And you know, I love our corner of the world because it's populated with you and all of our great listeners.
That's true.
So
thank you guys so much for listening to the Rock Guitar Confidential Podcast with Brian and Scott. Please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. Also, please take a gander at the new X-Aegis debut album. You can find it on Apple Music, Amazon, any place you stream or download digital music. Please also check out our website at www.xaegisband.com, and there you can find links to all of our social media. Please like and follow us on social media as well. What are you going to say, Ryan?
Again, that URL is www.exaegisband.com.
Know it, love it, live it. Peace.
Peace.